After producing my film's trailer, I felt that it featured several conventional elements that were associated with psychological thriller films. And during the process of production, I also made use, developed, and challenged some of these conventions associated with my genre to make it differ from many other psychological thriller films and also a successful media product overall. I felt I challenged the production company to start off with by having Fox instead of Universal Studios as the opening credits to my trailer, as Fox Searchlight has the same equivalent impact as Universal Studios. I understood that Todorov's process of the four stages is evident in most psychological thriller films, and I incorporated this also within my trailer. This would allow my audience to know the beginning, middle, and leave them on a cliffhanger at the end, not telling them the full story and narrative. However, I felt I developed my equilibrium stage as at the start the female protagonist is seen walking through the park. I made my protagonist wear subtle pastel colors to distinguish her conventional naive character role within the narrative against the antagonist, whom in many scenes is seen wearing darker shades of colors which have negative connotations associated with him and his character within the plot. I used low-pitched sad instrumental background music to convey the stage more of the narrative and reflect the protagonist's emotions clearly. The use of slow transitional shots with phase and longer takes further emphasizes this stage also within the narrative. This would be an ideal beginning for an equilibrium stage of a narrative in a psychological thriller film, as the voiceover suggests disturbance within the narrative already. However, I did feel that it fitted in well with the context of the plot and was quite effective in allowing the audience to understand that the protagonist had been cheated on before, setting a mood and atmosphere. Sometimes, and in psychological thriller films, the protagonist has issues in her life before, and the antagonist is seen as a ray of sunlight in their life and too good to be true. And I have incorporated it within my narrative. I felt the locations in which I used to start off my trailer were conventional, as parks are a symbolism of sanctuary and peace from the rest of the world, whilst normal everyday locations such as cafes and homes are also a common featured location, as they have the ability to bring the narrative together and make it seem realistic through the use of these locations. I felt throughout my trailer I have used a range of shots, most importantly the medium close-up shot. I feel I have developed this and adapted them to the specific scenes to convey my character's body language and emotions effectively, and is key in showing this to my audience. I felt showing a stage in which the protagonist and antagonist meet is a conventional part of the story's plot, as bumping into each other or accidentally meeting each other is seen in films such as The Perfect Guy and The Boy Next Door. This is a syntactic element within my genre, as we as an audience then expect them to both fall in love with each other during the course of the narrative. I accomplished this by using shot reverse shot, a cinematography technique used to form a relationship between both characters. This would be a vital part in the establishment of the narrative, as conventionally the audience understands the relationship between the antagonist and protagonist will not be for long. During the course of my narrative, I gave my audience an insight of the antagonist's behavior earlier than it conventionally is, allowing his character to be clear within the narrative and also creating a sense of foreboding and excitement for the audience watching, changing the monotonous atmosphere which was shown in the equilibrium stage. This shows my challenge on the conventions, as the use of this quick shot of the antagonist looking at the protagonist's images is usually not covered briefly earlier on within the narrative. In my trailer, it is clear the narrative is at its recognition stage, and I merge this together with the attempt to repair stage within my fast-paced montage shots to emphasize on the fear the protagonist holds within them through their facial expressions they are portraying, almost leaving my audience on the edge of their seats. The use of constant cuts and varying shot types, ranging from close-ups to long shots, build tension and suspense, as the audience is now aware of what the antagonist is capable of through the facial expressions and negative and obsessed body language he is portraying. In many shots, I use props as a way of defining my genre, such as knives and phones. Knives are a conventional tool which the antagonist uses as a way of self-defense from the outside world and gaining control and power over their prey. and I use this convention as the antagonist usually goes after a character close to the protagonist in an attempt to get rid of them. Adding on to that, the use of high-angle shots shows the power and authority of the male antagonist against the female character who is shot at a low angle, making her seem vulnerable and weak, which is a clear representation and convention in this genre of films. During my secondary research and looking at other film trailers, I decided to make use of this iconography to help further show my genre to my audience. I also felt that the use of sound bridge, which is also a convention in psychological thriller films, would link my montage shots together, and the use of crescendo would further emphasize on the disturbance and ruthless behavior of the antagonist and his forceful and obsessive nature towards my female protagonist. This is conveyed through several close-up shots in different times of the day to further reinforce his persistent actions towards her, conventional within this genre, and also showing a negative representation for male characters. This would allow me to support the narrative element of conventions further, as Strauss's theory allows me to develop and evidently show the behavior of the antagonist changing from love to obsession for the protagonist. It is conventional in many trailers with this genre to have the protagonist muster up the courage to confront the antagonist, and this is known as the final girl. I felt this is an effective and positive representation of women in psychological thriller films, as it allows the narrative to seem interesting and entertaining for my audience, which is my primary purpose. The use of the female protagonist now taking on the male role by wearing darker shades of colors and clothes such as black, which have negative connotations associated with them, and her hair out as she sees her reflection in the mirror through the use of close-up shots, complemented with loud contrapuntal music and an angry facial expression, suggests that she is stopping the antagonist from getting to her, and the use of the knife in her hands as iconography shows the role reversal, a convention I've used to build the climax of the narrative. Furthermore, the use of captions, now faster paced, would show the narrative is now beginning to pick up, and this would excite and intrigue my audience, allowing my genre to follow conventions in real psychological thriller films. Finally, during my texture analysis, I found that most trailers, and most importantly psychological thriller trailers, end with a cliffhanger so that the whole story isn't given away to the audience. It is conventional that the female protagonist is portrayed as a damsel in distress and is now a vulnerable character. At the end, the female protagonist is now seen as a damsel in distress, a common feature during the course of the narrative. This is also a semantic element associated with my genre, and I have made use of this convention, but developed it further by portraying the female protagonist as weaker and more vulnerable as she is tied up, whereas in the two films I analyzed, the actresses had a boyfriend or a husband who supported them till the end. Finally, throughout my trailer, I found that it is vital to highlight two of the most important subjects we face in society today, and through the use of wide research, I acknowledge mental health and domestic violence are a key feature and convention in psychological thriller films. As an audience, we tend to brush off these sections of the narrative and tend to focus on how entertaining it makes its plot seem, but in today's society, domestic violence affects 1 in every 4 women, and 60% of this usually occurs indoors. I thought by portraying my main antagonist character as forceful and intimidating would be an educated way of reaching my audience, primarily females, who predominantly take up most of that 60%, and to make them aware of the signs in order to stop this affecting them in the future. This convention in psychological thriller films is important, and I have made use of it by creating a film based on a theme of obsession and stalking. Mental health shouldn't be taken lightly in today's society. I felt that my trailer highlighted that through the use of the protagonist character and his obsessive behavior towards my female protagonist. Mental health is a common concept used in psychological thriller films, as they intend to play with your mind, and I incorporated this within my film trailer in several sections, such as the quick montage shots of my antagonist's aggressive behavior and through his haunting voiceover at the end, which is also a convention, as psychological thriller films end with cliffhangers for the audience to see. I felt by incorporating this I felt by incorporating this within my trailer would create a deeper understanding for my audience viewing my media product, and for them to broaden their knowledge about films within my genre, and also educate them and create awareness about these two issues in society and how they can have an impact on people's lives as they are not often spoken about.